Hello, my name's Andy Schmuckler. My mission in life seems to have become pretty clear to convey what I call a better human story, which I claim is not only valid, but has pretty important ramifications and puts some fundamental questions into a importantly different light. Questions like how to understand what we are as a species, how do we understand what kind of human world we've created and how our history has been, how we understand the challenges that we have to meet if we're going to survive as a human civilization on this planet for the long haul and not destroy ourselves as well we clearly might. So with that perspective in my mind, I find one of the adventures in my life is that it leads me to explore the terrain of the human world in a lot of different ways. It's a big picture, it's an integrated picture. And I've written a piece which is a little idiosyncratic, but is part of where things I get led to is exploring this better human story. This piece, which I'm about to read to you, appears this weekend in newspapers that publish me every week in a very conservative area of Virginia. But this one is not particularly geared toward sending any message to the conservatives. It's just sharing something I wanted to share. So here it goes. The name of the piece is, "What if we could be all of the best that we could be?" Imagine a human world in which every baby that's born develops into the best human being it had the potential to become. What people become is the result of their inborn potentialities interacting with all the formative experiences they go through over their lives. They develop differently if they've been born into a different family or in a different time and historical time and place, or a different cultural system. Then I wonder, how great is the difference between that ideal, where every baby develops into the best person it has the potential to be, and the actual world we live in, where every human being is shaped by a less than ideal world? What got me thinking about all this was what a friend of mine said about himself. On the one hand, he sees himself as of average inborn intelligence. On the other hand, he's a lot more capable than I've believed merely average intelligence makes possible. He's been given jobs of ever higher levels of responsibility, requiring meeting ever greater challenges, facilitating some complex problems involving American national security. As he sees it, if he's become especially capable, it's because of his lifelong practice of habits that helped him develop whatever potential he was born with. He's gladly taken every task on as a challenge. He's been continually curious about how things work, and he continually works to make them work. That account that he's given, if true, seems to have a major implication. The average person is born with potentialities to become a great deal more capable than what we see in the average life being led around us. And why wouldn't the average human being have great capability? The average child manages to learn a language without even being taught. And language is only one part of what everyone learns in order to function in their society. My friend's account has thus led me to think that a great deal of human potential is getting wasted among many other members of our society, who might have become as impressive in some form corresponding to their own proclivities and gifts as my friend did. if their lives had developed that potential more fully. And with intelligence and capability, so it would surely be with the various other dimensions of people being the best that they can be. Things like how loving a heart, how clear a perception of the reality around them, how well structured the character, how spiritually in touch and wise, how morally committed to the good. When it comes to realizing the best human potential, there are so many different virtues that matter. I sort of think of it as a kind of even more many-faceted than a decathlon competition. My friend's story, therefore, led me to contemplate how far short we human beings, we can infer, are falling in our actual world of the ideal person each might have become had they been born into the ideal circumstance that's been shaping them with the ideal set of formative influences. Which raises the question, and here's where we get to one of the core parts of my better human story. Why would the formative influence to which the world subjects us fall so far short of the ideal? Well, there is no reason to expect that the world that shapes us would be perfect. Even when it comes to our DNA, we are all born with less than perfection. Even a process that has been working for several billion years, consistently choosing life over death, what can survive over what cannot, falls short of perfection in what it produces. Despite evolution having fashioned the almost miraculously whole structures that are our bodies, the DNA we get is less than perfect. And if our bodies are imperfect, there's no reason to expect that we inherently imperfect creatures would create families or cultures that would be perfect for shaping their members into the very best that their inborn potentialities made it possible for them to become. But my life's work, the better human story is the envelope I store it in. My life's work shows that there's another major factor. It shows that our species inadvertently unleashed a destructive force that would inevitably make the human world and the people in it more broken. It shows that it was inevitable that if a creature did what humankind did 10 millennia ago, this force of brokenness would be unleashed. What we did was unprecedented in the 3+ billion year history of life on Earth. Our species took the unprecedented and fateful step onto the path of civilization, with civilization defined as those societies made by a creature that's extricated itself from the niche in which it evolved biologically by inventing a new way of life for itself. Breaking out of the natural order that biological evolution had created was a huge deal. And too little attention has been paid to the implications of that unprecedented breakout. The nature of that natural order that natural selection created can be expressed this way. The lion and the zebra and the grass work together to operate a perpetual motion machine, even as they devour each other. It can be shown, and I don't bother to do it here much, I'm wanting people to go look. It can be shown with compelling logic that leaving that order, bullet points, inevitably plunges the civilization creating creature into a new kind of disorder that, another bullet point, inevitably leads to a war of all against all, which, third bullet point, inevitably dictates that only those cultural options that can prevail in such a war of all against all, will survive and spread. So there's a selective process implied in those 3 bullet points. It is inevitable that the ways of power, those things that can spread, can survive and spread when in an overarching disordered situation of anarchy, where there's a war of all against all, only those ways that lead to success in that struggle for power, which turn out to be, as I put it, the ways of power, or the spirit of the gangster, will inevitably be the human future, not as a function of the nature of that creature, but as of the systemic dynamics of the disorder into which the system in which a civilization creating species inevitably descends. From those inevitable implications, we can conclude that the ugliness we see in the human world is not a picture of our inborn nature. There's a destructive force that's continually making us less whole than we by nature would be, because of the nature of the world we're living in which this destructive force is having a continuous destructive impact. And it shows, those implications show that if we can bring that destructive force under control, we humans can better realize our best potential. And then I have as my tagline in the newspapers, and I explicitly requested they put this here because, in a sense, one of the purposes of this piece is to see if I can get people to check it out and see if I deliver the goods about those inevitabilities that drive the evolution of civilization in a direction more broken than we are by nature. So I have the tagline: this understanding of the destructive forces humankind inadvertently unleashed is systematically laid out at, and then I give the web address of my website, abetterhumanstory.org. I am not under any illusions that I'm going to have some kind of stampede to my website to see that. In fact, one comment I got from somebody who is always responding from a biblical point of view is, basically he has no interest in whatever as I present, because it isn't the biblical point of view that we're full of original sin and that we depend entirely on God Almighty to redeem us from the ugliness that we are. But I do what I can to get people to check it out, because that is the mission I'm on. This is a sort of, I say, idiosyncratic piece, and I just want to say that it makes a couple of leaps that are, I think, warranted, but they're kind of unanticipated. My friends being of average intelligence, but then fulfilling that potentiality in an impressive way. I leap from intelligence and capability to the larger picture of all the dimensions of human goodness, that if we were subject to better formative influences, we could become a lot better in all those ways, like my friend did. So that was one leap. And then there's the question, well, why is it that our formative influences don't make us more whole and do make us some more broken than we need to be, so we fall further short of the best that we can be, because we're dealing with, well, that's what I'm saying about the better human story that I have to present. That that there is a way to understand that we're up against something that we have all kinds of reasons to want to bring under control. It 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 not only tells us that we are better creatures than we have thought ourselves to be. I'm looking for so it's not only to be found, but it's also to be found in this book, which came out from the University of Chicago, of California Press in 1984, getting a full-page review in the New York Times book review section, one of those Sundays in June of '84, and I commend it to your attention if you're interested in understanding why it is that being a civilization-creating species has some profound implications that have not been looked at well enough, and that we need to bring the forces that we unleashed under control if we're going to be the best that we can be, and to envision that we are, in fact, better than we've been taught, or that we imagine when we look around the world and see what we see, where Ukraine and the Gaza war and all that, so much ugliness on the picture. But that's not who we are, and that can be shown. So that's what I wrote as an op-ed. It was a way of getting that I had actually undergone by continuing to apply this better human story to everything I see and hear, including having a conversation with my friend who is a very helpful figure in the circles of American national security, even though, according to him, he's only of average intelligence. Think of what we might all become if we cultivated our best potentialities better, which involves overcoming the destructive force that we unleashed. Not because there's something wrong with us by nature, but because we were the first creatures to be able to step onto the path of civilization. And then thereby unwittingly, but inevitably unleashing a systemic force that drives our world to develop in certain directions we wouldn't choose but couldn't avoid. So take a look if you'd like to know if that can be shown. abetterhumanstory.org. You'll see a lot of ways of getting to it if